Hi, so today we're going to talk about first position. We teach first position because it's really important. First position is where we find the midline, right? And then when kids get more advanced, or students get more advanced, then we start using third and fifth. And most people think of fifth position when they think of ballet, but we still need to be passing through those first positions. One of my favorite exercises that requires a good first position is rond de jambe. We do rond de jambe all the time. You never outgrow it. And it's always a great chance to reset, to make sure that you are passing through that position. Your pelvis is where you want it to be. You are equally rotating on both sides. You are presenting your turnout. Rond de jambe is a fantastic opportunity for this. Every time we pass through our first position in a rond de jambe, all 10 toes need to be on the ground, both baby toes. We also need to have the hips connected upwards to the ribs and the tail going down. The great news is when we engage the rotators to both place the pelvis where we want it to be, it also helps us press our baby toes into the ground when you have that muscle chain activated appropriately. So every time we pass through, whether you're going en dehors or en dedans, you have an opportunity to make sure that your home base is where you want it to be. One of the kind of evergreen questions in teaching is, what is the best approach to help a student with hyperextended knees? I am currently unaware of any scientific dance medicine, kinesiology research that gives a straight answer. And if I'm wrong, comment below. I definitely need that information. But I prefer to have my little ones usually stand with their heels together and their knees not overlapping, which means their knees are not fully straight for them. And the reason I choose to do this is because that way they can't press backwards into their knee. A lot of people with hypermobility in the knee joint do tend to rock their weight backwards, and they're stretching the back of that knee more than it needs to be. For beginners, I like to have the heels together, the knees not overlapping, and then we work on developing the strength, the muscles around the knee from there with like the upward engagement. It's really common for people with hypermobility to have decreased somatic awareness, so it will probably take them longer to be able to sense when those muscles are firing. But I also think that when people develop the habit of releasing, relaxing, or even bending the knee in their rond de jambe, that is counterproductive to the eventual aesthetic that we're going for. With my pre-ballet, my ballet foundations, and my level 1, which is about up to age 8, covers through age 8, I do demi rond de jambe. So we'll go devant als cône first or derrière als cône first. And then I do get the heels back together because I want that pelvis placement more than anything. Once we reach level 2 and the rond de jambe starts passing through the first position, I do have my hyperextended students leave a gap between their heels. Maybe not as big a gap as they want to, but I do want a gap so that they can have the length through the leg, the engagement around the knees, the strong line that doesn't bend, it doesn't release, there's not a give there, and the appropriately placed pelvis. For really hyperextended people, you can't have all 3 of those and have the heels touch. So for me, it is the intention of the movement more than the heels touching. So there are 2 mistakes that I see in rond de jambe. One of them is really common. One of them is not common, but it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding, so I'm going to cover it. The first mistake that I see, the common one, is releasing the baby toe on the working leg, which just means, and it happens en dehors, it happens en dedans, it means that we are not really engaging our rotators as much as we could be. It's a really clear sign for me as the teacher, the turnout is not being maximized. Okay, so let's do mistake number 2. This one is not as common, but it is a fundamental misunderstanding. When students do the tendu, devant, or derrière all the way over to the toe of the standing leg, this is not how it works. Rond de jambe is the midline. It goes from the midline of your body around to the midline in the back. So that would be your spine, your belly button, your sternum, your nose. your heels together in first position. That is your midline. I have seen students who were trained in their Rana jump to go through the first, cross to fifth, point to the corner, around to the other corner, fifth to first to fifth around, and fifth to first to fifth. This is incorrect. This is not a stylistic difference. This is incorrect. Classical ballet training, the technique that we are in class for, does not cross the midline. And the times when you think it does is when we are using body directions like croisé or effacé. Effacé. I always want to say effacé. It's effacé. I'm pretty sure. Again, comment below, set me straight. If you are taking your tendu, devant, or derriere past your midline to the opposite side of your body, this is not clean technique. And in Rana jump, it is particularly problematic because the hips cannot stay level and stable. You have to release something to get that kind of going. You're like doing a figure eight. The purpose of Rana jump is to help develop the strength of your rotation equally in both legs, your standing leg and your working leg. And it is to warm up your hips. And you might get a really great hip warm up by like doing that little thing, but you are not serving any of the technique that you'll be doing later in class. Rana jump passes through first, always, and it never passes through fifth. I'm going to show the progression of Rana jump that I take my students with starting in level 1, which is about 8 years old, all the way through level 8, so that you can see how I build the ideas. If you are here because you are looking for a beautiful inspiration of gorgeous ballet performed by somebody with amazing natural facility, this is not the video for you. This is not the channel for you. I don't have beautiful, amazing facility. At my best, I am average. I am here to share ideas and concepts with you. And there are lots of beautiful dancers online that can show you glorious Rana jumps. Do not confuse the two of us. With my level 1 kids, and again, for me, level 1 comes after the pre-ballet and the ballet foundations levels. So these kids are about 8. And they usually are 2 hands facing the bar, but then you're only looking at my back, and who wants to see that? So for these kids, we have 1, 2, hold 3, close 4. With level 1, the goal is to keep the heel facing forward the same amount, whether we are in first position, tendu, or à la seconde. The goal is for that heel to not move. This is a really good chance to put like a rhinestone sticker on the inside of their heels, make sure it sparkles the same amount the whole time. That's the primary goal. The key principle in level 1 is stability. We are building core strength. We are building general muscle mass. I'm sure you noticed that I did that Rana jump in 4 counts, and they are traditionally done in 3. I put the pause in second position for a couple of reasons. I like to have pause moments where I have a chance to like help people fix things. It's hard to move and fix alignment at the same time. So for beginning dancers especially, they need moments where they are holding a shape and you have the opportunity to help refine that shape, but it's not so hard that they're clenching, you know, like if I had their leg up here, that wouldn't serve that purpose. I put the pause in second position, even though I am a huge stickler about the first position, because I don't want the kids standing in first position for 2 counts, because I don't want them placing their weight equally on 2 feet. I don't want to introduce this idea that we have a weight shift in a Rana jump. So I keep it in second. I do demi Rana jumps. Beginning of the year, I start with just en dehors. I introduce en dedans in unit 3. So for me, that's usually in November. There are different opinions on when to introduce the concept of derriere with beginner dancers. There are plenty of people who prefer to wait because derriere is very difficult to do correctly and they don't want students to build bad habits. My opinion is that they are doing derriere anyway. They're gonna do it during freeze dance. They're gonna do it when they're dancing around their bedroom. They're gonna do it standing on their shopping cart while they grocery shop. I've done that. You've done that. We've all done that, right? People do derriere. People think of arabesque as such an iconic ballet shape. It's going to get done. They're going to go through the movement anyway. So they're going to build those movement habits anyway. So I don't see a huge reason to hold off. The only reason that I don't do demi-rond de jambe, en dehors, and en dedans in Unit 1 is because Unit 1 has so much information for these kids. Some of the kids have come up through the pre-ballet and the ballet foundations, and some of them, this is their first ballet class. That's a lot of French words. That's a lot of standing turned out, which does not come naturally to most people. That's a lot of patterns to remember. I try really hard to keep my combinations, especially at barre, short and easy to remember so that we can focus on technique, but also get into the center. Because when they signed up for a ballet class, that's what they thought they were doing. I hold off for a couple of units just so that they have a chance to kind of acclimate to the class, and then I add it. I don't really think it makes a huge difference. It just helps with the way I pace my class. The next progression, the level 2 kids. Level 2 is where we really focus on what I call home base. Joan Lawson in her writing talks about the gateway, but it's this idea that when your feet are in first, your arms are in first, and then they move together. So we incorporate that in our rond de jambe right off the bat. For these level 2 kids, we just prepare 7 and 8 so that we can go through the home base. And 1, stay, 2, to the back, 3, 4. And then the arm stays because I don't want my classroom to look too busy. And we do 3 of them. And then the arms come down. This is where we work on the eye-hand coordination, arms to first. And then we have a moment to lift the eyes and double check that the hips are coming up and the tail is going down, the baby toes are on the ground. And then we would reverse it, and 1. I include the arms in the rond de jambe in level 2 because the key element, the key principle for level 2 is still stability, and then we've added the head turn. But when you add the arm movement, it challenges the core stability in a new way. And it also really helps to reinforce this idea that you want to pass the arms and feet through first position together as much as possible. I still do the head turn and not the tilt in this level because, again, we're working on stability, and I find that when they tilt, we tend to slouch. But if you turn, especially when you're in arabesque, if you turn towards the front foot, which in arabesque is the standing foot, you really start to introduce the concept of spiral into that arabesque, which is something that you can build on like indefinitely. I do have a pause in first position for this level because it's and 1, hold 2, 3, 4. The reason being I want to have a moment where I can cue the students to correct whatever it is so that every time we pass through first, we are passing through their best first. The level 3 rond de jambe that I start with is extremely similar to the level 2 because we are taking this idea of core stability in first position in their home base, and now we're crossing it to 5th, which when you've been doing this a while is not a huge deal, but at first it's a really big deal. I don't want their way too far back. I don't want it too far forward. I don't want them going sideways because level 3 is where core stability becomes a plomb. So I keep the rond de jambe very familiar and then add subtle ways to play with a plomb from there. 7 and 8, and they go from their 5th to the front, and 1, hold 2, 3, 4, and 5, hold 6. This is very familiar. And then from there we lift 2. This will challenge their sense of aplomb. Envelope 3, 4, up and over 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we will reverse it. It's that bas malant that starts to play with where is your center line, where is your base of support, And are we always coming back to our home base? Level 3's rond de jambe is extraordinarily similar to level 2 on purpose. Most of the exercises in level 3 are not the same, but I keep the rond de jambe because our key element, our key principle is aplomb. We do a familiar movement and then start adding a deeper level of understanding. We start thinking about it a little bit more critically. We add different things that will challenge their sense of aplomb. So in unit 1, we add the battement lent with the enveloppe. In another unit, we do a fondu intendu. So like the midline is here, and then you add I'm sitting down, I can't fondu and sit down. But as you fondu, you want to make sure that the midline stays centered over the standing foot and doesn't start to head off towards that tendu. That is a really good way to make sure they understand what aplomb is. Aplomb cannot happen without a very good understanding of what your midline is, where your midline is, and how all of your body needs to relate to that. Some people call the midline the central line. It's the same thing. Remember how I said some people have a fundamental misunderstanding where their rond de jambe will go fifth around, fifth and first and fifth around, and they are crossing that midline? You cannot have a well-developed sense of aplomb if your dancers think that crossing the midline is part of the technique. We started with stability in level 1, and then it was stability with head directions in level 2, and then it became aplomb, and now that we're in level 4, our focus for the year becomes épaulement, and we start tilting the head instead of just turning it. And the reason I wait so long is because it's just the upper body. We still need the stability, the center line, the aplomb from everything farther down. And I still have the rond de jambe pretty simple, because I care very much that we are still building that habit of passing through first position. We started in first when we were beginners. Now that we're intermediate, we're starting in fifth, but we need to find that first position inside the movement. The level 4 goes prepare 7 and 8 with the head tilt, and 1 and 2, baby toes on the ground, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and then as this leg pulls across, we lengthen away from the midline, 7, 8. In level 4, we still start from 5th. This is longer than most people start from 5th. I totally understand that. I recognize it. I don't necessarily disagree with you. Like, I may come to a point where I'm like, I'm going to do something different. I have a reason that I keep it in 5th, but I'm not like, this is the reason, you know? The reason is the key principle for level 4 is épaulement. Épaulement is just like collarbones up. So you still need to have that aplomb. You still need to have all of those habits from levels 1, 2, and 3 that we've been building. If we start to add the tendu on fondu to open to second, I lose that because the head starts to take over. I like to explain épaulement like it's a soft serve ice cream cone, you know, like the ice cream swirls around, and then at the very end you have that at the top, or you would put a cherry at the top. Your ice cream is a nice straight line. If your ice cream starts to do this, you're gonna have a really sad day. Your ice cream is nice and stable, and it's just a little twirl on the top that gets to do things. That's why I start it from 5th. I don't have a huge opinion about if other people do something else. In level 4, we are still pausing in first position. We pause in first position, again, to give that opportunity for people to double check. Level 4 is absolutely intermediate dancing, 100% intermediate dancing. And we hope that they're passing through that first position naturally and cleanly. A, they may not be, so it gives us a chance to verbally cue, to physically correct if we need to, gives them a chance to think about it. B, level 4 is often when we start doing point, and sometimes I'll have kids rond de jambe in their point shoes, specifically because the shank starts to be the boss and those baby toes start to come off the ground. and planting them back on the ground helps them re-find that turnout. The third reason that it is not a bad idea to have that pause in first position, this is a really common level for dancers from other studios to funnel into. Level 4 is a great level for these students to come to, partly because it has less vocabulary in the Geeky Ballerina curriculum than a lot of the other levels. So there's less new stuff to learn, which gives you a chance to refine some of the things that you maybe just want a minute to spend on. We really do hope that they have the somatic awareness to recognize that a tendu a la seconde and a first position have really similar placement. Like pelvis through spine, like that should feel very close to exactly the same. If they haven't made that connection yet, we need to spend some time helping them recognize the profound similarities there. They need to have that foundation before they can go on. In level 5, our key principle is turnout. So I use round de jambe in all kinds of combinations because I really, really, really want to build the turnout. Level 5 might seem a little bit late. Of course, we have been working on turnout up to this point. Level 5 for me is where the expectation is that every dancer will be able to showcase their turnout to the best of their ability. So if you have someone who's really closed off, okay, but you better be using what you got. 7, 8. They have 1 and 2 and 3 and half, and they fly. I use both arms when they do it, but I'm about to hit my own wall here. 7 and 8. On the or again, 1 and 2 and 3 and a half, and they stretch, and 6 and 7. On the or a third time, 2, 3. This time it's 4 that go around so that we can have 5, 6, 7, 8, and from here they rotate up into the retrograde derriere. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then they reverse. Even in level 5, I start my rond de jambe from a 5th position because grand rond de jambe parterre is new vocabulary for this level. I really, really, really want that solid before we make it part of the preparation. Lots of people put that N7, 8 preparation in sooner. There are some benefits to doing that. For starters, it's a really common movement pattern, and by the time you're in level 5 in the Geeky Ballerina curriculum, yes, you are taking master classes at competitions. You are auditioning for summer programs at different places. It would be unfortunate if that caught you by surprise. Also, by the time you reach level 5, the students are coming enough days of the week that it's really common for them to have more than one teacher. And if you are starting your rond de jambe from 5th, there's a good chance their other teacher is doing that preparation. Again, not criticizing that at all. Just a heads up, you will need to remind them every single day that you're the teacher that starts from 5th. The other element in the level 5 rond de jambe that is really unique to this level is how many different things they're doing in that tendu a la seconde. They're flying like a swan, they're stretching, they're doing all kinds of things. Specifically because turnout is a key principle, the key principle for this level, and it lets them know how much they are using the bar to help them maintain that turnout. Stretching forward in a tendu a la seconde and keeping your turnout is really, really hard, and they're gonna lose turnout the first time, almost certainly. It's a good educational opportunity. In level 6, the key principle is transfer of weight. Yes, we have been doing transfer of weight since pre-ballet A, where they're swaying forward and backward, right? But now we are looking at it because they are so far into their training. We are looking at transfer of weight with a much higher level of expectation. I use rond de jambe to help them find really subtle adjustments in their weight to help with that. And it's other parts of class where we really get more deeply into the key principle. This time we do have the traditional preparation of 7, 8, and they have 4 on dehors, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and then they have 1 on rise, 5, 6, 7, 8. I do expect a first. Babalan, 1, 2, envelope 3, 4, développé 5, 6, 7, 8, and then they reverse. I like to integrate rond de jambe en rise in level 6 because it requires a more refined sense of aplomb. Aplomb is how you are arranging your weight around your midline over your base of support. So if you're standing on your whole foot, your base of support is here. And when you're pressing to half point, my hands don't really do that, but when you're doing it on half point, your base of support is smaller. So you need to have even more control over your placement and your body arrangement. And it leads to a refinement of that sense of aplomb. And that very, very well-tuned aplomb is what leads to those really phenomenal transfers of weight later. So this does not seem like something that's going to make a big difference in, for example, their beautiful waltzes, but it actually does. Levels 7 and 8 are really refining and finishing levels that not every student is going to reach. Because these levels are designed for dancers who are wanting to go on to a professional career or a collegiate performing career, their focus is performing. And so hopefully they're in a situation where they have several performances a year, whether it's a regional ballet or an association with a major ballet company or a smaller studio that's able to provide 3 or 4 opportunities throughout the year. But it's expected that these kids will have rehearsals most of the time. The purpose of class shifts from teaching new vocabulary. There is new vocabulary in these 2 upper levels, but there's not as much of it. And class really becomes about preparing them for the choreography that they're going to do. The purpose of this rond de jambe is to warm people up. 6, prepare, 7, and 8. They have a 1, 2, 3, 4, double 5, single 6, low but off the ground, 8. By the time students get to level 7, they should be passing through that first position. Like, that should not need to be mentioned. Rond de jambe becomes about warming up the hips. Level 8 is very similar to level 7. It's a refining level. It is performance-based. I will change the bar exercises to better support whatever choreography we're working on. Rond de jambe is mostly just about getting things warm. Prepare, 7, 8, en dehors, and 2, and 3, 4, on rise, and 6, and 7, and 8, parterre, 2, 3, 4, and a 5, 6, 7, except they are bendier than me, 8. The rond de jambe jeté that I put in this combination has already been introduced. It is not new vocabulary in level 8. We are refining it and we are including it just to make sure that they are really warm and they really feel prepared for what they're doing that day. So that's how I progress my rond de jambe through the unit 1 of all of the levels. If you are interested in other ways that I progress technique, if you are interested in ways to integrate elements of artistry into your technique classes, I do have a monthly newsletter. It comes out the first Wednesday of every month. You can go to my website, geekyballerina.com, to sign up for that newsletter. I also have previews of all of the different levels of the curriculum available if you want to learn more about that. And if you want to start integrating or implementing the curriculum as a whole, you can buy it there on that website as well. If you like this kind of video where I break down how I teach an element through the different levels, let me know, leave a comment below, like this video. If you think this would be helpful to one of your students or fellow teachers, please share it with them. I would love that. As always, I hope you have a really great class.